I first encountered Joel as Marketman. Maybe you can talk to us about how Marketman or Market Manila came about.
I was outed by mistake by Anthony Bourdain. So we actually had a agreement, a signed legal agreement that he couldn't mention my name, but they were allowed to use my face at that point. But by mistake, he said something and it made it into the program, and that was it.
Yeah. Today, I'm with Joel Binamira, who is a food blogger. He started the blog Market Manila in 2004. He opened his lechon restaurant, Zubuchon, a few years after that, and is now on Instagram as The Real Market Man, where he talks about food, culture, taste. Well, I think you've been a voice of reason for the food industry, food ecosystem, markets of the Philippines. I mean, market meaning market where we buy produce and all of that. And then also as a consumer safeguard. So this is sort of something that has come into the mix. So it's sort of this, you are the voice of the people, but in a very, very, how would I say, very curious and deep thinking and, making kut till you get to the bottom of things, which Filipinos are not. Filipinos are not confrontational. We never want to rock the boat. We have a heritage of smallness, keeping things within our control and, for fear of consequences, fear of blowback, etc. So Joel has worn many hats, and I first encountered Joel as Marketman. And Market Manila was a blog which he founded in 2004. Yeah. Maybe you can talk to us about how Marketman or Market Manila came about.
Sure. So my previous career was in corporate banking and management consulting, totally different. And at some point, at around 40 years old, I decided to retire early. We moved back to Manila to take care of some family business. We had a daughter. And basically from there, it was doing a lot of sort of family real estate, not really full-time work. And the board hours were building up. And friends basically said, you should write something or do something. And have you heard what a blog is? And I actually had no idea what a blog was. Well, one of them set it up for me. So he said, what name would you use? What would you write about? He set it up, and I posted something on Dalandan, which was the first article I wrote about. It took me 4.5 hours to write, and it was 3 or 4 paragraphs. And my wife said, just press it, just publish it, right? Because I said, oh my God, what if it's wrong? What if there's something that's not right? So that went out. And then it took a few weeks and a couple more posts, but eventually I was going at a rate of about 1 to 2 posts a day. The blog did about 5,000 posts in total. And at its peak, it was doing 300,000 hits a day, page views a day.
Wow.
And 70% of it was from abroad. So it was Filipinos usually everywhere else who were missing home, missing the food. And initially for 4 years, it was completely anonymous, and not because of reasons. Probably the first time you're going to hear this publicly, but it was anonymous because they were rife with kidnappings at the time. I was outed by mistake by Anthony Bourdain. So we actually had a agreement, a signed legal agreement that he couldn't mention my name, but they were allowed to use my face at that point. But by mistake, he said something and it made it into the program, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so my business school classmates started calling and said, what happened to you? Like, why are you roasting pigs now? And I said, oh, this is for fun. This is not, anything serious. But so one thing leads to another, I think, is the story. And passion or interest or curiosity opens doors. So if you sit and you do nothing, then nothing happens, right? If you sit and you keep opening doors and you're smart enough to recognize some things behind the doors and maybe dig a little deeper, then it leads to something. And hopefully, if you have an underlay of wanting to do something positive rather than negative, then you have something that works. So Market Manila goes on. We host a lot of people from abroad because part of the story was introduce Filipino food to a foreign audience. On a trip to France, my daughter in the airport in Dubai looks at me and says, "Dad, you're so old. You only have a blog. You need to get on Instagram or you need to get on something else." And I said, "Well, I don't even know what Instagram is." So she put me on Instagram.
Oh.
And the reason it's called The Real Marketman is Marketman was already taken. Market Manila was already taken.
Okay.
So she said, "No, let's just do this."
But Market Manila still exists as the blog.
Yes, it still exists, and a lot of recipes are still visited. So I kept it up because people often want to check an old recipe. Doesn't cost much to keep it going. But the main difference is that Market Manila had an audience that would stay 4.5 minutes in the beginning. And now on Instagram, we're talking 8 or 9 seconds. So your ability to communicate anything useful has to happen.
So between the blog and between Instagram, there was Zubuchon.
Yes. Someone who sounded very random, a producer, kept sending me emails about lechon. I had written a couple of posts about my grandmother's lechon. And finally, I said, "Give me a call, because you're just asking too many questions." And it turned out to be Anthony Bourdain's people.
Oh.
And they said, "We're coming to Cebu in 2 weeks. Would you mind cooking a lechon for us?" I said, "Well, I don't have a lechon business. I just write about food." And he said, "No, that's precisely what we want." And I said, "Well, I can let you visit all the top purveyors." And he said, "No, I want you to cook the lechon." So I agreed. We were in a garage. I mean, literally the office was beside a big garage. And in 2 weeks, we hosted him. And he was very kind with his comments. And within a year, everyone kept saying, "Why don't you serve the lechon?" And I said, "Because we just made it at home." So we came up with the idea that Zubuchon would essentially be an employee-centric company. A lot of the profits went to the employees. They were paid better. They were all made permanent. So it was a social experiment on my end. I never pulled money out of it over the 18 years, except for a salary. And so the idea was to prove everyone wrong that you could actually run a business the way I thought businesses should be done, which is
like a collective.
Good for the employees, good quality output, and then your sourcing would be local and all of that. All before that became a big thing. And so their first time out, they took 2 lechons to a mall, and they sold out in like 20 minutes. But then the next day, as I said, it's just one thing leading to another. The Sunday paper came out with an article, full page, that said, "If you've been wanting to try Anthony Bourdain's lechon, it's now on sale at a Sunday market in Manila." So the next weekend, they had like 600 people in line.
God.
And then it took off from there.
This is in Cebu.
In Cebu. And then they realized this was serious. So by the next year, they set up a restaurant. I said, "I'm going to give you 6 million. That's how much money we put into this, 6 million. And we ended up with 20 branches, 500 employees, and maybe serving 3-4 million people over the course of several years. It's now come down since COVID, and I'm actually a little less likely to keep it going unless the staff keep it going. But it's an experiment that worked out really well.
That's amazing. And how are your staff? Are they still with you? Are they still the same people there?
Yeah, many of the staff are still the same. Many of them, I think, get it now. A lot of people ask me, don't you get frustrated when you operate in the Philippine environment in business or dealing with HR, things like that? I guess there are two sides to that, and one of it is yes, you will get frustrated, but the other side is an innate desire to teach or to explain. So I think there's a part of me that actually wants to educate.
Right.
And I think the blog does it
Yeah.
because the people willing to get the information,
Yeah.
they absorb it. And I don't
Right.
care who they are, and I don't care
Yeah.
how they do it. And then occasionally someone will challenge me on something which will, get the hair on my back
Yeah.
of my neck up. But as long as they're correct, it's fine.
Yeah.
But there's definitely that ability to do random good
Yeah.
for no return.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's been fun.
Yeah. Well, I think most creatives, just by virtue of whatever they're doing random good.
Yeah.
I wish though that more creatives were paid more. That creatives were paid more for their services.
Yeah.
But your social experiment is amazing because this is something that gives it. It's very empowering.
Yeah.
It's very empowering. It's good for your team, your your staff. It's good for our industry, especially the food industry, and then it elevates to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to talk about your origin story as a food person.
Okay.
Like, do you have food memories growing up? Did you come from a household that revolved around food?
I've been thinking about this, and no, like basically I had a very straightforward childhood, very decent food. My parents entertained a lot because they were sort of in business and politics. And so, yeah, we had food. It was a big deal. But I think what really drove the interest in food was exposure. And this is something I try to explain to people. So starting at the age of 11, I was fortunate enough to have a sister in New York. So I would spend 2 or 3 months out of the year with her during the summer. And they were big food people. And then another sister moved there. And then we, took trips through Europe, and then we took trips through Asia. And seeing all of that is what opens your mind. Mm-hmm. I moved to the States for university, went to Boston, and then figured out I didn't know how to cook rice or anything to eat. So that was a necessity to learn how to cook. And then after that, working for 15, 20 years, it was more of a side thing. I laugh about it. I had very high expense accounts. So I ate very well and drank very well, which is, another plus and happenstance based on the business we were in. So I ate in some of the best restaurants all over the world. And that's just fortunate. But I'm not really a starred kind of restaurant goer. I'll go. I've been to some of the top ones, but I'm really more of a lamon kind local food eater. So, yeah.
Could you give me a couple of favorite restaurants or food experiences from before coming back to the Philippines?
Okay. I wouldn't make them specific restaurants. I think I'm more likely to tell you experiences with specific fresh food.
Okay.
So if you go to a market and you're seeing somebody eating a soup beside the ingredient, I'm more likely to try that.
The ingredient.
So
okay.
it's a noodle soup in the middle of Madura, and you figure out that the main ingredient is turmeric and they have chicken and et cetera, et cetera. So I find that the memories that really stick with me are ingredient based. A banca ride through Bohol in my 30s, and the banquero gets off at a field of sea urchins and plucks 20 of them for you to eat them literally alive or recently alive, to taste the difference between a 10-second dead
Wow.
sea urchin and one that is
In a box.
5 days
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
So then you understand increasingly the nuances of flavor, the difference between fresh and not so fresh, the mindset of the local person who is eating it a certain way, who would be mortified to see it the way we eat it in a fine restaurant,
Right.
maybe. You try different ingredients, you understand why it's important to their cooking. And so the whole idea of sourcing ingredients, markets, was the basis for the interest in food later on.
Would you say certain cuisines are revolve, or specific cuisines revolve around a fixed set of ingredients? And what would that be for the Philippines?
Okay. I've actually done some numbers. So because of my background, I'm a very number-oriented kind of person. So I looked it up. For my lifetime, from the time I was born, we consumed 10 kilos of pork per capita a year. And today it's 15. So it's gone up
Wow.
50%. But chicken when I was young was 2 kilos a year. And today it's 15. So it's
Wow.
700% up. And that's, everyone eating a piece of fried chicken
That's
on the
right.
corner.
That's right.
Chicken was not a big deal in the 1960s.
Yeah.
It is a big deal now.
Yeah.
But the most glaring is that seafood was 50 plus kilos in 1962. And now we consume less than 25 kilos. Vegetables was 60, and now it's 30. Fruit was 60, now it's 30.
Yeah.
So you can actually see what people's diets are evolving
Right.
to.
Right.
So in general, it is 150 kilos of rice a year. And
Wow.
let me talk about the 99%.
That's a lot.
Yes, it's like 4 to 5 cups a day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that's down, I actually think, from before.
Before.
So if I talk about the 99% of the country for whom eating is sustenance, then it's heavily rice, a bit of protein, which is likely seafood, which they caught themselves, so it's free. And then heavily a sauce of some kind. It's patis or toyo or vinegar or bagoong. If they have vegetables in the surrounding area, it will be included in a broth or a soup. If they don't, they skip vegetables and they skip fruit. Okay, now if you shift to sort of the 1% that has the ability to buy everything, there's been a shift to a lot of meat. A lot more protein is in meat, beef and chicken and pork. And you still don't see a lot of vegetables. And the fish is a lot less available in the main cities, for example. And so if you look at Filipino restaurants and you take apart their menus, you'll find there's very little fish because it's very hard to source it consistently.
Right, right.
And so the focus is usually on pork, or it's on chicken, or it's on beef, which is changing the way we eat.
Do you feel that houses still make their own food?
I hope so. I mean, it's something we do, something I champion, and I hope that people still cook at home. But I fear that actually the vast majority of people find it far more convenient to eat out.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Because if you're cooking pinakbet and binagoong ang baboy for one, that's a whole lot of dishes to mess up.
Yeah.
And you can go to the carinderia nearby and buy it in a portion and not have to wash up. And so I get it. I get the convenience. But I'm hoping that the carinderias stay true to form.
Right.
Because what is in fact happening is that if you ask somebody 30 years ago, so when I first worked for Hong Kong Shanghai Bank here, we went to the cafeteria and there would be 3 viands that you would choose from, right?
Yeah.
And then a rice. And so I would hope that they stick to traditional dishes, because today, most likely, people will choose a piece of fried chicken and 1 or 2 portions of rice and maybe some ketchup.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
scream every time I think
Yeah.
about that, because I love fried chicken, but the diet has really
Yeah.
morphed into
Yeah.
something more convenient and something.
Yeah. Well, also incredibly unhealthy.
Yes. I don't know, it always surprises people when I tell them. So, you know the song Bahay Kubo?
Yeah. Okay.
There are 18 vegetables.
Yeah.
And basically, it's neither a native song. It was created by the Americans
Okay.
during the reign of the Americans to encourage people to eat
Vegetables.
vegetables, to add vegetables to their diet. Because technically, there are very few native vegetables. There are some, but they're not crops. So
Yeah.
they would have been pako, or they would have
Okay.
been root crops, and if you want to say native 500 years or younger, then it would have included, tamarind and things like that. But every single one of the vegetables in that 18 list of Bahay Kubo are all imported,
Oh.
right? And so any dish that you make today that has talong, that has kalabasa, that has patani, they weren't eating that over
Yeah.
100 and
Some years.
some years ago. So when you look at Filipino food and you say, why doesn't it have much vegetable? It hasn't
Yeah,
traditionally
yeah.
had
So what
much
were our
vegetable.
traditional vegetables aside from pako and
I think there would have been some root crops,
okay.
and then there would have been some
Kamote,
tree-related
sayote.
crops
Okay.
like katuray, the flowers of a
Okay.
tree. They say there was already malunggay, but that's doubtful because malunggay is Indian.
Yeah.
So it may have come maybe 500 years ago.
Yeah.
But vegetables would not have figured as
Prominently.
prominently,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
They would have eaten seaweed maybe
Yeah.
for some of that nutrient, which is
Yeah.
also very packed with nutrients. But they would have had a lot of fish, rice, maybe some sugarcane or honey,
Yeah.
which is also fascinating because I did a whole series. When Bourdain came, I told him, I'm feeding you food that Magellan would have had when he sat down 500 years ago. And he says, how do you know that? I said, because he had a chronicler who wrote it all down. And so
okay.
you can figure out what the dishes are. Probably an adobo,
Yeah.
probably a roast pig,
Yeah.
definitely budbud kabog, which is
Yeah.
millet. So that
Yes.
means they had millet at the time.
Yes.
They had vinegar, they had honey, they had salt. So you can almost narrow down all the dishes to the ones he was most likely
Right.
eating.
Right. Well, these are also Bisaya or Ilonggo foods.
Yes, because that's where they
were.
landed.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's where he recorded it. So,
Yeah.
and I love that recording because there's really two emphases. One is food, and the other is sex or body
Oh.
parts. And he was like really into all of the words for sex and body parts, and they're still accurate today.
Oh, wow.
Which basically says what was on his mind is
Yeah.
really the two things that probably
Right.
drive most humans, right?
Yes, yes.
But so, yeah, that's very, very interesting because he was very specific about what form of coconut was available. So, tuba
Yes.
was the toddy. He knew
Yes.
it was alcoholic.
Yeah.
Then he had lighter fermented tuba. He had vinegar. He had coconut cream. He had coconut milk.
Oh,
he had
wow.
grated coconut. So writing that all out in 1521 basically says to me he was looking at what they were
Yeah.
cooking with.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's a pretty developed.
Yeah. And the
Food
only reason we focus on that, because
horizon.
people say, I'm sure we had like great things in the 1200s. Yeah, but there's no written
Yeah.
chronicle of it. So it's hard for us to claim for sure that we had
Right.
it, except for maybe Kinilaw
Yeah.
in a cave because they discovered the bones or
Yeah.
whatever.
But the Philippines being archipelagic and so many different micro communities,
Yeah.
so many different languages, dialects, food groups, different taste buds.
Yeah.
If there is one food story or food group, food province that you feel we all need to know about, or the world needs to know about, which one would you choose?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Can I choose a few? So there are a couple of ranges of places. Two places come to mind: Central Luzon, Pampanga, and Iloilo, Bacolod. Food developed because they were rich and bored.
They were rich and bored.
Rich
yes.
and bored. Okay, so the sugar plantations,
Yes.
of which there were maybe only
Negros.
100 big sugar
Yes.
plantations. The owners, they sat around for 11 months out of the year, made babies, and then for 1 month, they harvested and they had gold.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do? They sit around playing cards, and the competitive game is for them to import French chefs in the late 1700s, who then come in, and each hacienda has one chef and another chef, and that's why desserts in Sugarlandia are so phenomenal. It's because they're basically local equivalents of French desserts. So
wow.
Napoleones, or they're all like
Yeah.
French desserts, right? So
Yeah.
anytime somebody says to me, "Oh, these are the best broas," I'm like, "Yeah, they're ladyfingers," but some guy came in 1790 and showed them how to make this, and it became broas, right? So
That's so
that history,
fascinating. Yeah.
and it was competitive because the doñas and the dons basically wanted to say, my food
French is better
than yours.
Yeah.
So then the competitive part comes: the clothing and the silverware and the tabletop and everything. So that's the sort of 1/100% lifestyle.
Okay.
And it is here to today.
Yes.
That's why you have all the cookies and the galletas and all of that.
Yes.
Probably more on its own are all of the Muslim dishes in the South. They are much closer to Indonesian food. They have a lot more spice. They bring in things we don't use in the North. They're very earnestly local, and we don't see enough of that
Yeah.
up north. Again, there are a lot of vestiges of the galleon trade. So they have a dish called pipian in Ilocos, and it uses crushed rice to thicken the soup, and epazote, which looks like marijuana leaves and kind of tastes like marijuana leaves. And it's because the galleons used to stop in Ilocos, and the sailors used to come off, and they taught the locals how to make the stew. And in Mexico, they use casoy or some other thing to thicken it, but that's exactly where the name came from. Then they continued down to Cebu. So in Karkar, there's also epazote. And in Cavite, there's epazote.
No, that's the root.
And so it's little tidbits like that people don't hear about, you don't learn about in your history class at school. But then when you hear about it, you realize there's a lot more intertwined in the world before the modern era. Right?
So which brings me to talking about like the lack of Filipino restaurants. Could it be because there's just so much diversity and there's a lot of provincial loyalty? Or is it a produce thing?
Filipino restaurants in the city
in the city?
Yeah.
I mean, a place that could standardize, okay, what is adobo? What is, I don't know, whatever, lumpiang ubod? What is,
I think the standard answer, which I don't know is if it's necessarily true, is it's because the best Filipino food is cooked at home. But I think that's a sort of easy way out.
Yeah, that's like everybody says that.
So,
but why?
I think part of it has to be there are no standards, right? And they actually tried to do that because that's something that Thailand did several years ago.
Yes,
Thailand
great
basically
success.
took the top 30 dishes, standardized it, and told everyone around the world, you do it this way.
Yes.
So I'm of one mind with that. It's like, yes, I understand standardization. I love it. Because when I buy a baguette, I want it to be exactly a baguette. And there's no reason to make it a baguette with something on it. Right? So Filipinos just love improvising. So our pandesal can be anything from 2 inches long to 6 inches long, from 2 pesos to 10 pesos, with fat or no fat.
Yes.
sandy and crumbly or salty or sweet.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of me that does want to see some standardization. There was an attempt to do it a few years back. I don't know if you know the book Culinaria. It's really hard
Is
to
that
do
the
it.
book that Neil Oshima shot?
Yes, I think Neil did it, but it also had contributions from like all the top
Yeah.
food writers and editors.
Yeah.
So at the time, Margarita Forrest is a very good friend.
Yes.
She had the draft of the book.
Okay.
And she came to my house and said, would you do me a favor and have a look at
it.
the draft? And I said, Margarita, I can't do that because I know I'm going to offend people,
Yeah.
right? I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that up front
Yeah.
because I'm going to say what I want to say. So I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. She goes, no, I'll do it anonymously. I won't tell them I
Who
came
okay.
to see you. I said, okay. So I took out a red marker and I went through the draft. And if I remember correctly, there were more than 150 errors
Oh my gosh.
in that tiny book. And they weren't major errors.
Yeah.
Most of them were the way the page was set up or a word was off. But there were some major errors, like the length of time to cook a lechon, which was her recipe. So I could easily tell
Okay.
her, there's no way a pig will cook in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And she goes, then she goes, oh my God, they left out the sentence or whatever.
Yeah.
So I gave it to her. And then for many years, I always felt like there was a coldness about, the
everybody-
professionals, right? Every time I
Everybody
would
knew it
see
was
them.
you.
Well, it turns out she brought it to a meeting of everyone and said, I have some suggestions because there are a lot of changes here. And she just took the draft out and put it in the table with the markings.
Oh my gosh.
And some of them, I have to say, were blunt. Like,
Oh my
I wouldn't cook the pandesal, it turns out, like hockey pucks.
Oh.
Because I actually cooked it.
Oh wow.
And I would not have written that unless
Wow.
I actually baked it. I said
Right,
some of
right.
these recipes haven't been recipe tested.
Haven't been tested.
Some of them have not been edited. And apparently within seconds, people at the table said, you gave it to Marketman to look at.
Huli.
My point is, why are Filipinos so against constructive criticism?
Yes.
Why are people not able to actually rally around the cause, which is a properly written recipe that everyone can agree is the basis for an
Yes.
adobo or the basis? And if you just come to me and say, well, it's because there's 75 kinds,
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but it's not doing the nation's
Yeah.
food any good if you go to Paris and you go to London and you go to New York and you're having a kinilaw and it's completely different because then people don't associate that kinilaw with the Philippines.
Right, right.
Maybe it's a Filipino chef.
Yeah.
Certainly they're entitled to do it any way they want to do it.
Yeah.
But call it something else.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my point. Like, why don't we save some of these key names and make it really that, right?
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Which Filipino restaurant would you take guests to in Metro Manila?
Okay, it's a great question because I've posted to several people in the last few weeks. We were hard pressed to come up with a restaurant. I generally take guests to my house because I know I can cook the Filipino food that I want.
We all can't go to your house.
Yeah, well, you can. We'll have you over. But the point is, I think there are several restaurants you can go to. It's just that you have to preface it maybe with a warning or
Disclaimer.
a disclaimer. Okay?
Yes.
So one of my pet peeves is that the evolution or devolution of Filipino cooking is that it's becoming too sweet.
Yes.
Okay, so the addition of
Absolutely.
sugar in almost every dish drives me nuts. So if I'm in a restaurant and I have an adobo and it's sweet, it gives me the chills because it's not meant to be sweet.
Yeah.
And you know why they do it? It is completely commercial in nature. At Zubuchon, we tested over 2 or 3 dozen dishes. And one of the options always had a sweetener, sugar cane, sugar, fruit, something in it. And the sweet won 95% of the time. So that's the reason the restaurants are doing it. It's a commercial thing.
Yeah.
It's what people
Yeah,
like.
it's
It's
popular.
what they order. Because your receptors on your tongue get the sweet first.
Yeah.
So if there's sweet in a dish, you think it's good.
It's good.
If your sweet receptors take
Light
off
up, yeah.
right away. And we're much less likely to appreciate a bitter receptor, which
Right.
actually is one of the more sophisticated
Yeah.
things to have in a dish. So I guess the short answer is there are places like Milky Way where I would go for particular dishes. They have a brilliant mixing of mustasa with calamansi and bagoong with a fried fish. So I love people doing good things. But I also feel that the more global we get, the less local is our food.
Yes.
So everything has a foam. Everything has
Yeah, that's my pet peeve.
and so
When
it's
it's
an international
unrecognizable.
technique that's
Yeah.
used with a local ingredient. Sometimes it works, but most of the time it really makes me wonder why.
Yeah.
Because the original dish is
so
fine
good.
on its own.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, which means I actually don't eat out that often.
Yeah.
But I do.
Yeah.
And there are people who get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cunanan was the chef at Bad Saint in
Mm-hmm.
Washington, D.C. He became a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you an example, he did laing,
Okay.
and I loved it. But the
Because-
laing was made with collard greens because he had no gabi leaves. He used good coconut milk.
Yeah.
He used lobster meat instead of shrimp.
Oh,
Okay.
so it's
And in
very
the
rich.
end, it didn't have the ingredients of a traditional laing, but he got the underlying tone of flavor completely correct. So if you're Filipino and missing home and you wanted laing and you ordered this, okay, so it's not exactly the same ingredients,
Yeah.
but the experience
Yes.
is totally 100%.
And the flavor is there.
Yeah. So I think that's where a lot of Filipino chefs abroad are getting it right. They're
Yeah.
Filipino.
Yeah.
But as long as they get the base flavor, the reason for it
Right.
happening that way, then it makes sense.
Well, I also, where does one learn how to make Filipino food?
At home,
And what if this is not an option?
there's actually very few places to learn it.
Yeah.
One of the culinary schools, I'm told, I won't name it, had a very, very famous French chef a few years ago. And his first question to the class or the entire auditorium is, how many of you have made sampalok broth from scratch for your sinigang? And about 5% of the students' hands went up, to which later on he commented, this is the problem.
Yeah.
Is that if you don't go back to the basics,
Yeah.
then how do you explain a dish?
Yeah.
Which is also the way I do it with my staff. So when I teach them something, I go back. I go to the market with them. I
Yeah.
pick the sampalok because it matters.
Yeah.
There's thin sampalok and there's thick
yeah.
sampalok. And if you're really annoying, you'll only look for a particular kind of
Yeah,
sampalok
yeah.
because it's far more sour
Yeah.
than not. It's just curiosity. I think that's what
But it's
drives it.
beyond, I think also because you have the curiosity, but also the ability to communicate or to ask the right questions.
Yeah, or to challenge.
And yes.
Yeah. And oftentimes, people in the markets are incredibly smart.
Yeah. Right.
So one example is Anthony Bourdain. We went to the market, the Taboan market in Cebu. And me being me, the week before, I walked the aisles 2 days in a row, got the names of the vendors
Yeah.
because I didn't want to walk into the market and seem
Yeah.
like I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So even my guy said that's a bit excessive because I
Yeah.
was memorizing,
Yeah.
names and things. But then he goes down the main aisle and to Mang whatever, and he looks at me and he looks at 7 barrels in front of us and says, "What's that?" And I had no idea. And then the guy says in Cebuano to me, the barrel on the left is only 2 weeks fermenting dilis, and the ones on the right are already 3 months. After you press that, that's the finest
Patis.
patis. That's what he
Yes.
said in Visayan. Anyone who
Yeah.
goes and listens to it can probably decipher
Yeah.
that. So I looked at Anthony Bourdain and I said, well, he explains that it's different levels of putrefaction or rotting
Yeah,
fish, but that the extra virgin fish sauce comes from the one on the right. You press that and it has the purest flavor of putrefied
Yeah.
fish,
Yeah.
fish
yeah,
sauce.
Yeah, yeah. Fish sauce.
And then they cut.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he says, that is the first time anyone has ever explained fish sauce to me that way. Did you just make that up?
Yeah.
And I said, well, he explained what it was, but the extra virgin
Yes.
fish
yes.
sauce, yeah, that's the equivalent
Yes.
of extra virgin olive oil.
Yes.
And he burst out laughing because he says, these are the kinds of tidbits
You'll
that
never.
they are market tidbits.
Yes. So, what do you feel is the biggest misunderstood notion about Philippine cuisine?
It's not so much what's misunderstood as what gets abused.
Okay.
And the current abuse for me right now is ube.
yes.
Ube, everything around the world. And the reason
Yes.
it offends me is that the vast majority of it is not ube.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that happened with truffle oil.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks it's so sophisticated and so expensive and so nice to have on everything. And 95% of truffle oil has no truffles in it. It's a chemical.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with ube.
Ube.
And it's not even made here. A lot
Yeah.
of it's made in Indonesia, it's made in China, it's made
Yeah.
So it's become this explosive ingredient associated with the Philippines, but in most cases it's artificially done and it doesn't taste like ube
Yeah.
off the farm.
Right.
And it's used in areas that make me cringe.
Yeah.
So whether it's hamburger buns or lattes or
Yeah.
it just, so it's not really an ingredient that's used in its context.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, some would say, never mind, because then everyone knows it's Filipino.
Yeah, but that also points to the lack of standardization. Because if there was standardization, all these ingredients would have parity.
Yeah,
You know, they would be able to be, they would be used accordingly
yeah,
and in moderation and in combination with other ingredients.
Yeah.
But I think popular culture tends to do that.
Yes.
They sort of baptize an
Yes.
ingredient or baptize an idea,
Yeah.
and then, you know,
So when something takes off, people will move with the tribe.
yeah.
And then what's lost is that the Philippines is actually one of the epicenters of ube. And
Yes.
there are different varieties
There
of
are.
ube. My mother's from Bohol, and theirs is kinampay, which of course to her is like the best ube. And actually it's a very, very, very light lavender. It's not
Deep purple.
a deep purple.
Yeah.
And so even something like ube jam from Good Shepherd.
Halea, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the
in
classic-
the copper pan.
Right. That's the classic use
Yes.
of it. And it's unusual because
Yeah.
it's starchy, but then it's sweet. So it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to explain to people why. And it's a love-hate relationship
Yes,
with
yes.
halea. But I once wrote about that and I said, I question whether the nuns
Yeah.
were using food coloring because their coloring
It's
was
super
so
purple. Consistent.
consistent.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got a letter from Mother Superior.
Oh, wow.
And she said,
Saying-
we don't use food coloring.
Oh,
and I said,
wow.
oh, that's good to know,
Yeah.
right? But she didn't say anything else.
Yeah.
So the consistent color hasn't been explained other than if it uses dried ube,
Right.
prepped ube, which
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
possibly colored. So yeah.
You know, the diaspora, these second, third generation Filipinos who are out there in the world, like how can they enter our food ecosystem?
Yeah. It's tough because it's very family driven.
Yes.
Whatever their parents made for them, that's what they think Filipino
Yes.
food is. Actually, I have an answer to that because the early part of the blog, between 30 and 70,000 followers were abroad. And many times their comments or private messages had to do with trying to extract the authentic dish and understand. So actually,
Yeah.
there's that part of me that says, if you help even 10 people,
Right.
get to that.
Demystify whatever
Yes.
this is. Then you're doing a public
So,
good.
for example, a couple of things that come to mind. Key limes in Florida are dye-up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So they came through Arabia, etc., from Malay, like hundreds of years ago. So that whole idea of having a key lime pie, I've renamed it a dye-up pie. I make it all the time, and I just say it's a dye-up
It's a
pie,
daya
right?
pie.
So whenever they say there's no calamansi, I say just buy a lime and put a little orange juice, and the combination of a lime and orange juice comes close.
Yeah.
Another reader in Saudi Arabia sent me an incredible email that said, I miss tinapa so much, and I haven't been home in 25 years. How can I make it?
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's pretty tough to make
Yes.
a batch of tinapa. So if I were you,
Just come home.
I said, just head over to one of the British stores,
Yeah.
go to their food hall,
Yeah.
and get some kippers.
Okay.
Bring it home, blindfold yourself, microwave the kippers, and put it on hot rice with vinegar. You know the answer that came back like 5 days later? He said, it's exactly tinapa. I said, yeah, that's the best substitute for tinapa you can have in your part of the world.
Yeah.
But it's that desire to do something closer to authentic, quote unquote authentic, that is interesting, because there's a yearning to do something the way it really generally was done in the past, right? And if it's a good thing, why would you change it?
Right.
Adobo is a classic because now there's like 500 versions of adobo.
Yes.
And we just say there's 500 versions of adobo. I'm like, well, why don't we just call it something else when you throw in extra ingredients, right?
What do you feel is the most overrated Pinoy food?
Ooh, this is a tough one, but I'd have to say lechon.
Overrated?
And I sell lechons. I think it is overrated because the vast majority of lechons, you have to be honest, if you go to a party or a dinner, right, you might get some of the skin, but then it might already be soggy and the meat doesn't really taste that great. And most people like it as paksiw, not as lechon. So I'd have to say, unless the lechon has been properly prepared, roasted, and served with the steam coming out of its butt, which means within 45 minutes of coming off the fire, it's hard to really do lechon.
So what is the best meal you've had in your life?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd have to say it doesn't have much to do with the food. It has more to do with the company. And that's where, if I think about Filipino food, we all really should think of it in terms of occasion. So it's always feast or famine for the vast majority of Filipinos. So it's either fiesta or non-fiesta, harvest or non-harvest, Christmas or not Christmas. Major holiday, birthday, communion, etc. And that's where they show off and they put out as much food as they can possibly do. But I think if I were asked, what do you want to eat for your last meal? It would be just a variety of ingredients that I would want to have a last taste of. A good ripe Philippine mango, definitely. A kinilaw of some sort, made on the spot. And then pork, definitely, some form of it. Usually the skin.
Chicharon.
A few
Some
square
kind
inches of
chicharon.
it. So it's more about tastes that bring back memories.
Right.
And it's not necessarily extravagant. I love caviar, but it doesn't necessarily make the cut for that last meal.
You know, I was reading some while back about wines, And there was, I think, the critic of one of the major publications in the U.S. was asked, "What is the best bottle of wine you've ever had?"
Yeah.
And his answer was similar to yours. It had nothing to do with the wine.
Yeah.
It had everything to do with the occasion,
Yep.
with the company. And he
Yep.
says, when you think about drinking a special bottle, there must always be good company
Yep.
and a proper occasion.
Yeah.
And then it becomes exponentially better.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you about, because it's become a very sought after or followed topic in your Instagram feed, which is your consumer reports.
Sure.
Knowing that it's like you are what do you call those people who track? It's like it's like a consumer report.
It's basically holding people accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
It's interesting. It gets a lot of hits.
Yes.
Again, my background is in numbers and
Yeah.
in doing things a certain way.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I get annoyed when people do something that is against your interests.
Yes.
And I find that so many Filipinos are unable to voice their complaints. And they actually turn out to be one of the most visited
Yeah.
posts.
Yes.
Because they feel the same way, but they don't
Yes.
know how to
fight,
address it.
how to go about it.
I think it's very useful because it has a positive impact for consumers. And it's a tough thing to do because you can offend.
Yeah, well, you've taken on airlines, you've taken
Banks.
on banks,
Yeah.
credit cards, the service industry,
Restaurants.
and restaurants. But I feel like it's a big, for me, it's learning not to give up. Because
Yeah.
at the end of it,
Yeah.
somebody needs to be held accountable.
Totally. I think there's a lesson to be learned, and why should it be even me trying to teach it?
Yeah.
But, the interesting thing is, in 22 years, I have never had to withdraw a post an apology, reverse something. So part of it is you better be sure what you're writing about,
Right,
because you can certainly
Right.
do the wrong thing. But even my lawyers, who come from a very big firm, they burst out laughing every time they see me, because they'll tell me that post was this close.
Yeah, you're on the line.
From,
And you're speaking for hundreds of thousands of people
Yeah.
who are in the same situation, who feel absolutely ignored.
Yeah.
And because for whatever reason they don't have the capacity, the means, the time,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Customer service has a long ways to go
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So, and laws actually need to skew towards helping the
Consumers,
consumers rather than.
Anyway, my last question is, where do you buy your produce?
Okay. Well, I go to the markets usually twice a month.
Which markets?
The easiest one for me is the FTI one in Taguig, but the best one is really Farmers Market. And then we hit the Nasugbu markets fairly
when
often.
you're there.
And I hit the markets in Cebu.
Yeah.
But I usually have to go 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah. But you're also a hoarder, I think. Like
I
when
am.
when you find a good ingredient,
I do.
you buy
I
deep.
have 4 refrigerators and
I
freezers.
was gonna say. Yes.
So if I find rhubarb, I will have rhubarb for the next
Yes.
6 months.
Yes.
But that's because supply is erratic.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so the heritage of smallness, which I mentioned at the beginning. So it's a Nick Joaquin short story that talks about the Filipino fear of moving beyond his or her comfort zone.
Yeah.
And we experience that a lot. Well, not a lot, but enough to take note of within the creative community. When they're offered bigger opportunities abroad,
Yep.
they don't want to take it because
Yep.
they're already happy with
Yep.
this. So do you experience this in your...
Too
let's
much.
say, Too much.
Too much. I think the Filipino educational system does not encourage you to burst out, does not encourage you to stretch, does not
Yeah.
encourage you. I grew up in a household where we were challenged from like 5 years old by a lawyer father who would say things and say, what would you do in this situation? Why not? Right? So that's the first part. The second part is I went to school abroad. For university and for graduate school, I worked abroad. So that's a broadening of your outlook. I tell my waiters at Zubuchan, you will learn everything you need to know in 2 years. If I were you, I would then strike out after 2 years. And the only place I would like to see you go is either a 5-star hotel in the Philippines or work abroad. Because that's the stepping stone that you have and the career that you will build.
Yeah.
Most of them take 8 to 10 years before they take that step.
Wow.
Qualified people who could easily have gone on a ship at 2 years, they wait until 8 or 9.
What are they waiting for?
They're worried. They're hesitant.
Yeah, there's an anxiety.
There is an anxiety, but now it's really growing on itself because several have gone. And they're seeing that they're so successful.
The effect of that.
Yeah, and it's hard, if
the others.
they make 60 to 80,000 plus tips a month versus making 30.
Yeah.
So it's double or triple.
Yeah.
And I said, that's worth making the effort. And it's so much easier now because you can talk to your family every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, in the days we went off to school, I'd send my dad a letter. I wouldn't get a reply for 60 days. So the communication is so much easier now. Yeah. And it's something that you really need to push people to do something unusual. And I think it's a 1 in 20 kind of thing. Yeah. I rarely find people like that. When I find people like that, I keep them.
Yes, agree, absolutely.
And it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Could be someone in a restaurant, or it could be someone in a bank.
Yeah.
Or even if you ask people to come up with ideas, they're dumbstruck if you don't guide them.
Step by step.
Sometimes when you apply to jobs or they ask you to do something, don't do the safe thing.
Yeah.
Do the outrageous thing as long as it's within the realm.
Right.
And most people don't take that risk. I don't know why. You're applying to 20 jobs. Why wouldn't you take it on 3 or 4 of them and see if it works?
Very good advice. Life advice too. Keep it fun.
Yes. Thanks, Yusuf, for having
me. Thank you, Joel. Yeah. Maybe you should have a podcast. I think, or maybe you want to take over this one.
We'll see how this goes.
We'll see how this goes. Anyway, thank you very much for spending time with us. My name is Lorenzo. I'll see you next time.
Creative Encounters with Isa Lorenzo is a Silverlens Gallery production produced by Manila Media. The Manila Media team is led by executive producer Ella Evangelista Martelino, creative director Leo Sanchez Matias, producers Dred Irum and Mel Lozano, associate producer Christine Parafina. At Silverlens, our thanks to co-director Rachel Rillo, the entire Silverlens Gallery's team, and hair and makeup artist Pia Reyes for making this series possible. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and follow at Silverlens Galleries on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more inspiring conversations on art, design, and culture. Until our next creative encounter,